Okay, good to go.
Good afternoon. I want to call this meeting to order. Today is April the 28th, 2025. This is a special meeting of the Accountability and Implementation Board to essentially consider Carroll County's request for a waiver. The first comment that I would have is, first of all, to thank all the staff members and others who are on this line and the members of the board as well. We've met quite a bit over the last couple of weeks trying to make sure we get all of this right and to proceed in a manner that I think is reflective of the seriousness of this particular endeavor. So now we will have an adoption of the meeting summary from our last meeting. Their motion for approval.
So moved.
Been moved. There's a second to the motion?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion reference to the summary or changes? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion. We'll have a vote at this point in time. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, we will proceed and have those minutes adopted. Okay, we now are going to agenda item number 2, which is the Carroll County Public Schools waiver request. Let me first of all thank Carroll County for the materials they provided and the testimony in response to questions on April the 17th, and for the additional follow-up information they provided for the record. But let me also indicate that we maintained the record open until the 21st of April, and we did not, at least we received some, but we did not provide as part of the record anything that came after the 21st. Let me explain why. We wanted to be fair to all parties, and when we announced the date for the closing of the record, it was done so to give each and every person an opportunity to contact us. If we continue to receive information after that, without any type of formal process to do so, and others have an opportunity to respond to that, that would create a gross unfairness. And so at some point we have to close the record, but we cannot continue to seek information thereafter that and allow one side to provide information without the other side responding. So this is why we closed it at the end of the 21st. Although information came in after that, we did not provide that as part of the record for today. In addition, there was information that we received between our meeting on the 17th and the 21st. That was, and I think is concluded as part of the record. Overall, I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,300 letters in response to this waiver. All of those that came in prior to the 21st, up to the 21st, are part of the official record. Let me thank Carroll County community for your advocacy. As I indicated before, 1,300 letters or emails, quite a bit from the community. Although we do not make our decisions solely on just the emails and comments from the community alone, there are a multitude of factors that we look at, but I do want to thank you for your advocacy. We've taken all of that quite seriously, and I appreciate having so many people who are so strongly, so strong advocates for public education. I want to emphasize something else as we go through this process today, that I repeated this, but I want to make sure we clearly understand this, that the blueprint is not a one-size-fits-all approach. We have made exceptions, but it's generally been evidence-based, and it does not deter from our primary objective of ensuring that we're providing quality education for all of the kids throughout the entire state of Maryland. That's our objective, and we want to make sure that kids are career college ready by the end of the 10th grade, no later than the time they graduate from high school. So if there's an evidence-based rationale for making a change, then we've decided that we will do that as the circumstances and conditions permit. And so with that, I want to go through a couple of comments today that I think are helpful for our consideration. I know that as we've looked at this, there's been quite a bit of information. Some of it is not accurate. Some of it, I think we've had an opportunity to sift through and understand it a little bit better. But some of it, I think, is caught up in the height of the motion and the time that we're looking at. But what we've done is to look at this carefully to make sure that we sift through the information in a way that I think is appropriate. As I indicated before, we left the record open until the 21st. We received 1,300 emails contacting us. And the notice of this meeting was posted on the 18th, I think it was. And we received additional feedback between the 18th and the 21st. Now, we are going through this process today as follows. At the end of what I consider to be background information, we will have a motion. That motion will be voted on. Before voting on that motion, the members of the board will have an opportunity to raise questions, make comments, make any information as they want as it relates to their vote. Now, I am recommending that we support the Carroll County Public Schools request for a waiver because I think that they have demonstrated a sizable shift in staffing will be required that will, in fact, be unreasonable, disruptive to effective teaching and learning throughout the district. I think that they've demonstrated that. Carroll County is asking for more time until FY28 to phase in the staffing changes, to search for innovative solution with its technical assistance consultant from AIB, and ultimately meet the requirements of the AIB. Carroll County is not asking to remove the requirements altogether. In fact, I asked the question directly in the record of Superintendent McCabe, and she reassured this body, we are not asking for a change in the requirements, we're simply asking for more time. She gave us those assurances in that meeting. In addition, I read a letter from one of the superintendents, one of the person who's actively engaged in the community, who stressed essentially the same thing because I thought that letter reflected a great deal of what she was conveying, what the community was conveying in terms of what it is that they wanted. I read that letter into the record. So they are not asking for a change in the overall requirements, just for additional time. Now, based on all of that and the background information that we've been provided, I asked the AIB staff and council to prepare a decision, a recommended decision that I believe we should grant a waiver for Carroll County up until FY28. This is a recommendation. This is a recommendation from me to the board, asking that we approve Carroll County's request for a delay until 2028. We will go through the basis of that decision, the record itself from staff, and then at the end of that, I will provide some additional information and make a formal recommendation at that point in time. So this is a recommendation from me to the board. I asked the staff to prepare documentation supporting that recommendation for our consideration. I'll ask now our counsel, Mrs. Rutter, to provide an overview of the decision, of the proposed decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to set the stage, I just wanted to remind everyone the waiver that is being requested by Carroll County Public Schools is a 2-year waiver for fiscal year 2026, which is school year 25-26, the upcoming school year, and fiscal year 2027, which is the following school year. They're requesting a waiver from the minimum school funding requirements for 2 funding programs, the compensatory education program and the English learner, which is also known as the multilingual learner education program. The waiver request is to waive both a statutory requirement and a policy requirement that's set forth in a joint policy that was adopted by the AIB and the State Board of Education. This request applies to all public schools in Carroll County that have the relevant student populations that have for compensatory education and multilingual learners. So just stepping back for a second, the statutory requirement that is a part of this decision is set forth in section 5-234 of the education article. And that law requires a certain amount of funding, which is called minimum school funding, to be distributed directly at the school level. Minimum school funding for compensatory education and multilingual learner programs means that 75% of the funding must follow the eligible students to their schools in order to ensure that the resources are available for their specific educational needs. Compensatory education funding is for students from low-income households, and multilingual learner funding is for students with limited English proficiency. The policy requirement is related to a policy that was adopted in May 2024 by the AIB and the State Board of Education that created a phased-in approach for complying with the statutory requirement. Essentially, in that policy, wherever a school system was in terms of compliance in this school year, the 24-25 school year, by next school year, it had to close the gap by 50%. And then by the following school year in 26-27, it would have to reach full compliance. Without this policy, they would be required to be in full compliance at this time. So turning to the grounds and justification that Carroll County set forth for seeking the waiver, for the compensatory education program only, they set forth grounds based on a significant increase in the enrollment of compensatory education students across the district from FY25 to FY24. And that increase was 86.3%, which is significant and compares to a statewide average increase in the same time period of just 33.6%, which is probably also still significant, but not as significant as what happened in Carroll County. For both the Comp Ed program and the Multilingual Learner program, Carroll County also asserted that between fiscal year 2009 and fiscal year 2019, so over a 10-year period, because there was overall declining student enrollment in the county, they experienced local budget cuts of $40 million. Those cuts resulted in the school system eliminating administrative office and instructional positions during that time. And because of the elimination of those positions, when the blueprint law was enacted in 2021, the school system did not have the flexibility necessary to adjust staffing to align with those minimum school funding requirements. To reach compliance with the minimum school funding requirements in fiscal year 2026, the school system estimated it would have to eliminate, reduce, or move close to 200 full-time equivalent positions in a single year. The school system is asking for more time to phase in the changes in order to minimize the impact on teachers and students. They also seek additional time to work with their technical assistance consultant, APA, which was provided through a grant by the AIB, to identify innovative approaches that may result in fewer staffing changes. I also want to highlight, because it is one of the requirements of the policy that this board has adopted around waivers, the robust public engagement that Carroll County Public Schools engaged in. The school system conducted a number, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was, I think, between 5 and 7 town hall meetings and other meetings between January and April 2025. They also posted their waiver request documents and videos with slide presentations from those town hall meetings on their website, and they accepted public comment. The AIB also accepted public comment and received, as the chair said, over 1,300 emails, almost all of which were in support of this waiver request. So that was public engagement. The next element that the school system needed to provide was their plan to align with minimum school funding. So what the school system said is that in order to start phasing in its plan to implement minimum school funding, they were going to shift administrative and supervisory positions beginning in the upcoming school year. Pending any recommendations from its strategic partner, APA, the school system has promised to make necessary changes in instructional support positions at middle and high schools in the 26-27 school year, followed by those same changes at the elementary school level in the 27-28 school year. They will implement all classroom teacher changes during the 26-27 and 27-28 school years. With that, Carroll County Public Schools intends to reach full compliance in the 27-28 school year. The next part of the board's decision would be the board's findings. If the decision is adopted today, these are the findings that the AIB would be making. First, you'd be finding that requiring full compliance by the end of fiscal 2026 will have an unreasonably disruptive impact on teachers and students throughout Carroll County Public Schools. Next, changing the status of approximately 200 full-time equivalent positions in a single school year will likely create an environment that interferes with effective teaching and learning. You also would find that an 86.3% increase in compensatory education students in a single year is significant and is one of the reasons why Carroll County Public Schools is required to reallocate so many resources. You'd find that the waiver request is consistent with the intent of the blueprint. The Maryland General Assembly listed 3 reasons for an LEA to request a waiver from minimum school funding requirements, and 2 of those reasons are based on significant enrollment shifts like the one here. You'd also find that the law was written to allow the AIB to use its discretion when other circumstances exist that make waiver of 1 or more minimum school funding requirements for a limited duration a more reasonable approach than requiring full compliance. Next, you'd find that the process of reallocating resources among schools to align with the law is more complex than was originally anticipated, and that the AIB is authorized to grant waivers that allow school systems to reach compliance in a manner that is consistent with effective and productive implementation of the blueprint law. And finally, in light of the information and data provided, you'd find that the Carroll County Public Schools is committed to achieving full compliance with minimum school funding requirements of the blueprint in fiscal year 2028, following a plan that aligns with the goals and objectives of the blueprint.
Is at that last point that I'm going to add some requirements that I think we should attach there too. I think that the findings that we've just heard are basically a part of the decision that we'll make today. And so let me repeat the last component of that. And believing that Carroll County's public schools are committed to achieving full compliance with the minimum school requirements, funding requirements of the blueprint in FY 2028, following a plan that aligns with the goals and objectives of the blueprint, that we will confirm that as a decision of this board. But a decision of this board does not stand alone because there are some additional requirements that I would like to include in the motion that will be made in just a moment if we grant this approval. The following: 1, Carroll County Public Schools will code all compensatory education and multilingual learner expenditures at the school level by February the 1st, 2026. Second, Carroll County Public Schools will implement this plan that was submitted as part of the waiver request, but it may amend the plan as needed with prior written approval by the AIB. 3, Carroll County Public Schools will submit their FY 27 and 28 budgets to the county, including the changes anticipated in their plans for compliance with minimum school funding. 4, beginning on October the 1st, 2025, Carroll County will provide written updates at least semi-annually on the school system progress toward compliance with the law in FY 28. These updates will include, at a minimum, specific focus on any recommendation APA has made and whether Carroll County Public Schools is incorporating the APA's recommendations into its plans of compliance with the law. And then finally, Carroll County Public Schools will engage in the progress monitoring process as deemed necessary by the AIB, including all of those points that I've just made in terms of requirements and the findings that we have before us as outlined and discussed, at least read by our attorney. I therefore make a formal recommendation that we approve the Carroll County's request as stated with the requirements and the findings of the board. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second
I'll
it.
second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. And before we move forward to a vote, we will now open the floor to discussions, comments, reflections by individual board members. I can't see if there are any. Can you for me, Mr. or Ms. Heiss?
At this moment, I don't see any hands.
Okay. All right, I'll make sure everybody fully understands the motion, including the 5 requirements. We're approving essentially a 2-year delay. And we have the findings as expressed by our attorney and reflected in the motion before us. Is there any unreadiness? Okay, I will call for a vote, and this will be a roll call vote.
All right, I'm going to go in the order that you're on my screen. So, Member Manco,
I vote in favor of approving the waiver request.
Member Doss,
Approve.
Member Lynch,
Approve.
Member Robinson,
Approve.
Member Stapleton,
Approve.
Chair Leggett,
Approve.
and Vice Chair Kerwin is absent. He is out of the country.
Okay,
So the motion passes 6-0.
okay, thank you. Let me again thank all of the board members for your hard work, your dedication to purpose here, and for all of the things that we've adjusted and moved forward. I think this is important for our system. We wanted to make sure that we've done it correctly, having the input of so many people who have knowledge about this process and knowledge about what is happening in our school system, then it is reflected in the seriousness in which we've taken this. I'll give an opportunity for anyone who want to make a comment or explain their vote at this point in time.
Mr. Chair, I do not see anyone's hand raised.
Okay, let me emphasize the point that I made in terms of my vote and my position. I do not take this lightly. I've indicated on several occasions that as we're swimming this channel together, it's not my intent to go back and that we're going to get across. But in doing so, we recognize that there are adjustments or changes that we need to make in order to ensure that we're doing this as effectively as possible. That in so doing, we keep in mind the North Star that we have, i.e. that our kids are career and college prepared by the end of the 10th grade, no later than the 12th. The adjustments here were not as foreseeable as we thought when the blueprint was originally put together, as indicated in our recommendation. It is a little bit more complex than we realized. And so we will not make this decision on the fly, we will not make it lightly, but with the level of seriousness that I think is reflected in our decision. And you can see that from the public record. Again, I apologize for not receiving any additional information post 21st. I know there are a couple of comments that people wanted to make, but as I've indicated before, It would have been grossly unfair to those who've already placed their information into the record, and we would have an endless array of back and forth long before we've had an opportunity to vote and even after we voted. I want to thank again the superintendent and her staff. There's a great deal of work and information that you provided us. This is not a easy process to go through. It's a lot of work, a lot of hours that your staff have put in, and I think they've done a yeoman's job in providing that for us. And thank the community again in Carroll County for your advocacy and your attention to detail and recognizing that there was an issue that needed to be addressed. And I think that we've addressed it in a way that is fair and balanced. With that, unless there are any additional comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, if I could just make one comment, I just
Sure.
want to let everyone know that the written decision will be provided, as soon as possible following the meeting. We'll post it on the website and also share it out.
Okay. Yeah, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's moved and properly seconded, we adjourn. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.